The soul never speaks in urgency, only in knowing. Welcome to Energy Alignment for Entrepreneurs, the podcast helping entrepreneurs be free from anxiety, stress, and tension through balancing emotions and consciousness expansion. 3 things you'll discover in today's episode. How to differentiate soul signals from survival fear. Why urgency is the ego's panic, and what to do when clarity feels silent. The soul never speaks in urgency, only in knowing. And the urgency is a force. It is a limiting force. And so frequently, the urgency in our life goes unquestioned. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't times to go into an intense state of being, urgency. As intensity is a power, it's a strength, while urgency is a pressure or a force. Other words, weakness. And the soul, it'll speak to you in powerful states. Even, see, this is where the interconnectedness of your awareness begins to be irrefutable, where you're having a specific, maybe you're watching how you're thinking, you're observing how you're feeling, the emotions are boiling, bubbling, powerful, and all simultaneously the weather confirms that. Whether it be the rain begins to pour extremely hard, or the wind picks up at an intense pace. You'll notice these things which are beyond synchronicity, where it's almost your mind will have a thought, you can't make this stuff up. So the nature of when the soul is speaking to you, it's almost like the universe feels like it has your back. And the knowing is a certainty in the fact that you are not alone. But the deepest truth is that you are alone. It's just that in this journey, the aloneness isn't the common sense of how a human defines that word. It's a different level of stillness that when you know, when you feel, when you've seen what's irrefutably true, you understand that it's just you, but it isn't just you. And the game is essentially understanding what you're sowing. Because in this world there's a non-dual aspect to it, and then there's a very obvious dual aspect to it. So that's the paradox of, yes, you are the one thing. You are alone. But that aloneness isn't a weakness. You're anchored to being nothing. You're anchored to simplicity. And that simplicity, that nothingness, creates a relationship and understanding with the laws which are unwritten, right? As you tune in to the universal truths, there isn't much space for weakness in your life because you see the relationship between urgency, fear, lust, greed, envy, and how that changes your point, your state of being, your appendage point. It changes your center when you entertain or you do not entertain specific vibrations. So, in the knowing, it is a certainty in the way that you move. Your movement is meant to be spontaneous. So you disconnect from the mechanical, habitual forms of life. And especially perception, right? Your state of being creates your perception. If you entertain nonsense, then your perception will also be nonsense. You repeat a lie to yourself enough, you cannot any longer differentiate what's true. So it is of the utmost importance that we question our worldviews, our states of being, how they were created, so that we understand the nature of what a human being is, right? Because that aloneness is the fact that humanity is one. One thing, one source, one creation. But it doesn't seem that way. Not at all. It doesn't seem that way. And the actual fruit of what I am, when you are not self centered, you can actually hear, listen, and see. And when you can see, then you can share that understanding with others. And as that understanding is perpetuated, radiated, there can be a communion where you and another are dual, yet actually together, one. When you live in that manner, you allow for others to understand where they're hinged, where they're trapped, where they're weak. You create space for no judgment, but rather understanding. Judgment is not to be confused with discernment, as discernment leads to understanding, and judgment just leads to that ever perpetuating growth of illusion. Now, all this being said, it is absolutely necessary for humans to go through blindness, to live for a certain period of time, as the consciousness can only handle so much truth. It's kind of like, I love this analogy. I first heard it from Leo Gura. Ultimately, the analogy that he shares is that if you have a extreme voltage and you try to plug like a 60-watt bulb into that voltage, maybe it's a entire electrical unit. I forget the specific practical words, but you drive past those compounds, the big home bases for electricity. If you were to try to take that amount of electricity and use a 60-watt bulb, the bulb would break. Consciousness works that way. I wouldn't say consciousness is so much a electrical frequency, but more so a energetic vibration, which is it is a current. So I'm not gonna get too nuanced there. But as you learn by observing the nature of energetic vibrations, you can understand the potency of certain moments. You have to work at it to unravel the vast amount of wisdom that has been packed within certain moments in your life. If you try to unpack everything instantly, your consciousness, where you are on your individual journey, you may not be ready. Now, all that being said, let's dive a bit into first point. How to differentiate soul signals from survival fear. And it's really not so much of a how to. It's not that simple, right? I can't just give you a blueprint of how to understand truth. It's too beautiful of a field to just explain in a straightforward, hey, I know something, and here it is on a platter, and now you know it too, and I'm awesome. That's not what this is. It's rather you feel and you learn through feeling, and it takes a persistence, a perseverance, a honesty to look at what you're feeling and to discern rather than judge. But when you do this, then you'll start to get a taste, a smell, right? Sometimes you can smell when it's about to rain. You can taste, okay, you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes. Like sometimes, right? It's cloudy and you can hear the thunder and obviously it's about to rain. But other times there's just a moment where you smell it, you feel it, you can sense the weather's about to change. The scary part of it is thinking that you know something. That's the trap. The actual special man is only special because he knows that he is nothing. A large amount of humanity thinks themselves to be special, right? Because they haven't looked at the nature of consciousness itself and understood the deepest truths of this universe. No judgment placed upon them, as I was once blind as well. We are all meant to go through this, being blind, starting to get a glimmer, and then seeing things. And you never just see things clearly forever. You have to work at it. You have to surrender. You have to let consciousness purify you from within. We've been speaking a bit about the soul signals. Now, the survival fear, you can start to feel how limited it is, how familiar it is. That's the real nitty gritty in this expansion of consciousness is the familiarity is the comfort, and that also is the trap. Now, the tough part about communion and expansion is that you have to literally be courageous, first and foremost, to walk into the dark, to say, okay, maybe I notice the fear and I'm still going to go into it. I'm not going to entertain the fear and be swallowed by it. I'm going to look at my fear and still choose to dive into that abyss. When you move in that manner, that's the strengthening of the soul connection and the dissociation from old, familiar, mechanical, routine patterns. So, the thing is that the unconscious is unconscious until you expand your awareness. As you expand your awareness through doing this work, through feeling, through observing your internal dialogue, through noticing the correlation between action, emotion, and thought, and also just external stimulus triggering a memory linked to knowledge and experience, then thought hijacks and you start thinking about the past and clouding your clarity. You no longer have clarity when you're in that space of self-centered me, my past, my memory, my identity. But of course, you have to have that. You have to feel it. You have to look at it. Else, you're just a non dual clown. See, the essence of what I'm saying here is learning how to embody truth while still being who you are. So, that is meaning that you don't act like the world is love, light, perfection, even though fundamentally it is. You recognize that not everyone is at the same level of consciousness, and therefore you speak in a compassionate tone. You have an awareness of whom you're speaking to in the level in which they are operating from due to the holistic awareness of their body language, their words, their speech, their tone, their gestures. The list goes on. The only way to meet people where they're at is to be void of self interest, meaning that you listen and your attention is full blown in tune awareness of the situation rather than the projection. So to be in the moment, it's something that I'm doing my absolute best to articulate to you, but it's not like do this and do this and do that. Now, why urgency is the ego's panic? See, what's the differentiation between intensity and urgency? I know we talked a little bit vaguely about it before, but urgency is this, right? We used words like pressure and force. But the next step is understanding how you, in your identity, with your self importance, have created the urgency. What strings have been combined to have the image, which is then an idea, and then the urgency of the emotion? When you break down the characteristics of what you are as a human being, you begin to see that the things which are psychological, the things which are unseen are not actually confusing, but it's almost like math. 1 + 1 = 2. What else? I don't really got another one. Let's say it's dry. Okay, well then animals don't have water. Okay, very 1 + 1 = 2, right? You live in Arizona, you have less water than in an ocean. It's that sort of simplicity that furthers your awareness. But the trap there is that you're dull, that you're too silly. So that's where the balance of, okay, that's where intensity comes in, right? Because if we're saying that urgency is an ego panic, which is a weakness, well, then the intensity is also realizing that you care for the world. You only have so much time. So, how do you juice yourself? That's ultimately what I'm trying my best to do. Is I understand I won't be here forever. I will die. My bones, everything turns to dust. So, all that being said, how can I juice my consciousness for humanity? Doesn't mean I'm special. The only thing that I think is good about me is that I don't think I'm special. When you're intense, you don't really have space for this weakness, which is a urgent panic, because you're just there and you realize wherever you are, whatever the circumstance, the world could be crumbling around you, and you're still going to have this strong, healthy intensity without panic. Ways to understand consciousness is to see how paradoxical can you get, right? Because that's the balance, that's the game, that's the joy, is paradox. We have emotions because without emotions, the world would be boring. But the thing is that so many of us, we take our emotions too seriously and then we forget to laugh at ourselves. So we must learn to have that paradoxical nature of, yeah, this isn't urgent, but we do have an intensity in relationship to the fire within. Like this fire is stewing within me. And sometimes, like, how do I put it? I feel so wonderful recording. Honestly, now on to the last point. What to do when clarity feels silent? It's tough, but look at the fundamentals of why you feel how you feel. But you will change because the only constant is change. And when you understand the fundamentals of why you feel a certain way and you no longer are meant to feel that way, you will change your actions, which are creating your vibrational states of being. When clarity feels silent, you need to understand this quote, which is uncomfortable emotion is a signal to reflect upon your actions. Let's say you pick up the phone. That's a action. The next segment of that action is internal dialogue. Can you notice, right? We've said it before in this episode. Can you notice the relationship between your action and your internal thinking and feeling? Because if you can, then you'll act righteously inevitably. It may take you a little bit. I know it's taken me a little bit. I know there are still things that I do, and then I wonder, I'm like, no, that needs to change. And I would say that everything that I'm speaking here is not only going to hit you when you need it, but this is exactly what I need to say. This is exactly what I need to hear. Because the man speaking, obviously, you know this, there's no perfect human. And there's so many things where I'm just like, different content, different details. You inevitably, humans will get to the point where we surrender, where we say to ourselves, you know what? I've tried this, I've tried that. I've been pushing for this, I've been pushing for that. I'm not quitting, I'm not giving up. I just need help somehow, some way. And this isn't a weakness. The weakness of I need help is, oh, could someone please help me? I'm so help. No. When you say you need help, that means that it's a relationship, a surrendering to your intelligence. You're not going outward and asking, hey, Joe, can you help me do this? Hey, man, I've been struggling. No, you're not even using those words because your perception of your quote unquote struggle is really understanding that this is the purification. It's a purifying fire. So you're not struggling whatsoever. You're changing and you're meant to change because that's what's been written by what's greater than this identity, the me, the I. So if you enjoy this, share it with a friend. I enjoyed sharing this with you. And I thank you so much for listening. Really, genuinely. Handshake, hug, let's go. And besides that, if you would like to work one-on-one, you could shoot me an email. You could also sign up below for the emails. I'm sending them out a couple every week. Ultimately, those are going to be distillations of these videos just in written form. So if you like a little variety in the way that you consume this sort of information, then hey, you know what to do. But if you want to work one on one, I got your back. We could work on physical health, we can work on consciousness. It's what you need. I'm here for you to meet you where you are at. Okay. I'm not going to work with everyone. I only got a few slots, and I'm not going to be offering this forever, too. I can almost guarantee you I'll be more limited in the future. I can guarantee you that. So take advantage of it now. It's not urgency, it's just honesty with the timing of my life. So let's go. Come on now, let's go. Share it with a friend. See you soon.